But first, let's bring in the panel. Shadow Environment Minister Jonathon Duniam and LNP Senator James McGrath. Well, welcome to you both. The ACTU vowing to lobby the government to scrap junior rates of pay if the Fair Work Commission application fails. This comes after the Shoppers Union has launched a bid for the Workplace Tribunal to abolish youth pay rates, which sees them, of course, receive just a percentage of full pay rates. Sally McManus, ACTU Secretary, says it's anachronistic. She says it should be dealt with on discrimination grounds. Well, Senator Duniam, I think that it hit business pretty hard at a time that business doesn't have much fat in the till.
Oh, precisely. The union movement completely out of touch with how hard it is for businesses to make ends meet are going to drive the stake into the heart of the small business community even further. We are pricing ourselves out of the market on so many levels now, and on all these grounds, discrimination being the latest one they're going to level at, trying to change the laws here. But business are up against it. And today I was with Peter Dutton at a factory in Sydney, and, the things they're talking about are energy, inflexible IR laws, which are about to get worse if Sally McManus gets her way, and red and green tape. And they'll bow to the will of the union and this government because they think this is what they've got to do to pay their paymasters. So it's disastrous, and it's going to be very, very tough if these changes get through.
And look, it does young people anyway, because you're not going to get a job at 15, 16, 17 with no experience unless you're a bit cheaper to hire. And that's how you get your foot in the door. That's how you get experience. And suddenly when you can get the adult rates of pay, you've got the experience to back it up and get that job over the line. I just think it's crazy. Misinformation, if I can, Senator McGrath. Victorian Bar Association, they have warned, and they are quite left of centre, I have to tell you, the Bar Association in Victoria, they've warned that Labor's misinformation bill will lead to a chilling self-citizenship. Now, I know the Libs, the coalition is against this, but Labor's trying to ram it through the Senate anyway. What do you make of this analysis?
It's a bit strange, a bit weird when the Victorian Bar Association are coming out and essentially agreeing with us in the coalition, because we are strong defenders of freedom of speech. That's why we opposed the misinformation bill in the first iteration and now the second iteration. It's why we oppose truth and political advertising. What you see with Labor and the Greens, their first move always is to try and censor, to try and stop people having their say, whereas we want people to have their say, especially and even when they disagree with us. It's called living in a democracy.
Yeah, well, we saw what happened with, quote, misinformation, disinformation with The Voice. It was all one way. So good on the coalition for standing up for this. I just fear that there's a cross-bench negotiation happening with the Teals and others to get it up anyway, particularly before the election. NDIS reform, Senator Duniam. I mean, this list of now the banned items, I mean, it's just incredible. We have been paying as taxpayers for about 10 years for alcohol, cuddle therapy, sex workers, crystal therapy. All of these will be banned from Thursday, from tomorrow. But I've got to ask, how did it take so long for this reform to happen? Why weren't they taken off the list months or years ago?
Well, it's an indictment on all governments, and even the one I was a part of, frankly, to allow this to go on. I mean, I do not know what medical practitioner thinks crystal therapy actually works and helps someone with whatever they may be experiencing. But the worst part was when we were going through the debate culminating in these changes, which have taken too long, the minister who stands up in front of the cameras today to present this list of things that are going to be no longer paid for, thankfully, by the taxpayer, castigated anyone, any political opponent, any Australian, any media commentator that would dare question the operation of the NDIS and the supports provided to people across the country in need of the services of the NDIS. But here he is today doing what was right all along. Frankly, he's been dragged here kicking and screaming. It's taken 2 years for them to get their act together on these reforms, and thankfully the taxpayers won't have to pay for this garbage anymore.
You were right to remind us, of course, that Bill Shorten, who has delivered these wrought reforms, was the bloke who put them in place as the minister all those years ago under Julia Gillard. Hey, the NRMA, they've come out today and said that EV batteries must be tested, they reckon, as part of roadworthy checks. They're very concerned about a whole lot of vehicles catching fire. Julie Batch says the frequency of car fires is similar between EVs and internal combustion engines, but EV fires often cause more damage to the car because the batteries are bigger. They're practically like a bomb, James McGrath. I don't suspect you're a bloke with an EV, but what do you make of this push by the NRMA?
I'm a bloke who's got a couple of diesel four-wheel drives, so you won't see me driving an EV. But what the NRMA is showing us all is the impact of electrical vehicles are going to have on all of us, but also in terms of the normal motoring consumer. So the NRMA look after motorists, and if they're coming out saying these things are basically dangerous, these are bombs waiting to go off, then why aren't the policy regulators, the policy makers, i.e. federal Labor, doing something about this? This should be a wake-up call to all of us.
What about you, Senator Duniam? I'm really concerned that Chris Bowen has automatically said we're not going to have any inquiry into the Chinese componentry, the security risks behind not just EV cars, obviously, but chips, etc., everything that's everywhere from China in our supply chain. We know that this is something that's under active consideration in the US Congress. We're mad just to take China on trust, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. But the blind ideological pursuit of this mad goal that Chris Bowen and Albo and others are having us chase is they don't care. I mean, we talked before about government telling us what we can and can't say through these mis and disinformation laws. But as James has pointed out, they're not too worried about the safety concerns around the cars they're making us drive with the laws they're putting in place. What about, as you say, national security concerns? I mean, we know that foreign actors can interfere with these devices. And I tell you what, I'm not an EV driver, and I certainly won't be driving a Chinese one anytime soon if they can interfere with a car behind the wheel, of which I'm behind the wheel of.
I've got to be quick, James McGrath, but help me unravel this one. The Queensland Premier, Stephen Miles, we're obviously into the election campaign now, but he says he won't make deals with minor parties, but he's left the door open to test his numbers if they don't get enough seats to form government. Well, what's that mean?
I mean, you just can't trust this guy. This guy, every time he opens his mouth, he's not telling the truth. The only way to get change in Queensland is to vote for the LNP and David Crisafulli. I'm speaking to you from the Coolum Beach Bowls Club. I'm about to launch Dan Purdy, the Shadow Police Minister's campaign. We've got 3 weeks to get rid of this mob. Anything Stephen Miles says, ignore him. He is lying. He was lying last week. He's lying today. He's going to lie next week. He'll do anything and say anything to stay in power.
I can't disagree with that. Got to leave it there, Jed. See you both next week.